When was the last time you sat in silence for just 5 minutes? Most people can't do it. And it's not because we're busy, it's because it's downright uncomfortable. And also, maybe because we're afraid of what we might find there. Researchers at this university, University of Virginia, ask undergraduate students to sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. And when I heard about this study, I wondered because a friend of mine had taken his son on a ski trip. And while on that trip, his son was on his phone every down moment, even on the ski lift. And when asked why, his son said, "I don't want to be in the void." The void. My students call it that too. And the results of this study showed that 2/3 of men preferred giving themselves electric shocks rather than sit in silence. They would rather cause themselves physical pain than be alone in the void. The women, on the other hand, were significantly more comfortable sitting quietly, and I'll just let you draw your own conclusions about that. But I think this experiment tells us everything about the world we've built. I'm a neuroscience professor, and for years, I studied dying neurons, trying to figure out what happens when brain cells degenerate in brain diseases. Till I realized I was studying the wrong kind of dying. I was in my 40s, absolutely perfect at everything I had been taught to do, 4 perfect kids, perfect tenure track job. However, here comes the caveat. I was exhausted. I was crushing it. I was also crying in my car a lot, but crushing it. I had a 1-hour, 45-minute commute one way. And when I realized I had a faculty meeting at 5 p.m. on a Monday and that I had to teach at 8:30 the next morning, I borrowed my son's red tent and I slept in my office. It's a lot, right? I got the Rising Star Award. I wrote a book. I got tenure. And yet, I was shiny and never still. I was that exhausted. So I started quitting things, starting with social media. Facebook was easy, but I had to write Instagram a breakup letter. Has anyone here ever done that? People ask me if I was okay. The issue was not so much the social media, but it was that I didn't know how to be still at all. I learned that even when getting off social media, I thought stillness would follow. But silence, it turns out, is not the same thing as stillness. I had to come at it through the body first. Nature, movement, sound, and breath. So that summer, I rented a beach house for 2 weeks. And while my kids slept, I found myself on the shabby carpet of this living room floor, following instructions given to me by a friend who had a PhD in neuroscience who practiced Kundalini yoga. She said, sit spine tall, arms up, fingertips to the base of the fingers, thumbs point in, and then breathe through the nose. Emphasis on the exhale. For 11 minutes. I thought it was absurd. But I would have tried anything because nothing was working to calm the circus inside my head. My arms ached. And yet afterwards, something in me had settled. Without prepping for stillness first, my mind filled up every quiet moment the second it appeared. But one by one, these practices were teaching me something really unexpected. The void is our truest existence, and I had never learned how to tolerate it, or sit with it, or cherish it. In science, change happens gradually. It happens when the evidence against the old way of doing things becomes impossible to ignore. When there are too many cracks. I had too many cracks. And for the first time, instead of filling them, I looked at them. When I learned to be still, I all of a sudden could see what was happening in my classroom. I started asking my students, what has education been like for you? I had been teaching 15 years. I had never asked that question. I found quiet, polite, high-functioning trauma. And it showed up in different ways. There were students who had walked away from higher ed altogether. Brilliant students who could see the gap between what education promised and what it delivered, and they couldn't unsee it. There were others who had learned to game it, channeling all their creative energy into becoming the perfect pre-med performer instead of a deep learner. And others were still in their seats, having panic attacks and taking notes. All of them had lost something. The wonder-filled way they approached learning when they were 5. And these aren't character flaws. These are survival responses. In my own classes, about 1 in 6 students have formal diagnoses that require legal accommodations, like extra time on tests. And that number's already high. Those are only the ones we count. So a formal diagnosis requires money and time and access, and not everybody has those things. When researchers asked 84,000 college students about their health and gave them screening surveys, 1 in 3 students reported moderate to severe anxiety, and same goes for depression. This is not a formal diagnosis. This is the truth of their own experience. And I believed them. And I couldn't teach the same way anymore. If 1 in 3 of your plants aren't growing, that's not a plant problem. That's a soil problem. They're not broken. Our students are growing in conditions that aren't working for them. And the answer is not to accommodate harder, but a different approach entirely. There's a really famous picture that explains how we think about human needs. It has basic survival at the bottom, and at the top, self-actualization. Maslow described it. Somebody else drew the pyramid to make it more understandable for executives. And we built a world on this picture. So we have our basic physical needs at the bottom, and at the top, the thing you get to after all your other needs are met is knowing yourself. It's reaching your potential, finding your purpose, creative flow. That's self-actualization. And Maslow thought most people never make it there. If we believe that, human intention becomes a powerful force, and we make it true with the ways that we raise our kids, the ways we build our education, and the ways we lead. We've been teaching from this for generations, but I believe that we drew it wrong. And so I built a new one. Self-actualization isn't at the finish line. It isn't even a level. It's at the core. It's woven through everything that we do, all of our other needs, our health, our relationships, what we think we're worth. And when life makes those things hard, self-knowledge is what holds you together. It was never a ladder. It was always a loop. I built 7 tools from this, one for each way that a student disappears from their own education. But the first 2 are where everything starts: meet me and see me. So what does this look like in a 300-person course? Students sit at the same seats, circular tables all semester. And on day 1, I tell them, you belong in this course. And on our first day, we play a board game together called Cranium. It's a neuro course, it seemed right. They watch lecture videos before coming to class. And during our time together, we build brain models out of Play-Doh. They perform synapse plays where they become neurotransmitters. They solve insomnia puzzles using escape rooms. And there's an optional 40-day meditation practice. But none of the students will tell you this is an easy class. It retains rigor. So can you teach self-actualization? Well, no, but you can create containers for it to grow. I tested this by proposing a first-year consciousness course. In the neuroscience world of molecular biology, it's about the same as announcing you've decided to become a fortune teller. So together we studied the neuroscience of consciousness, but I also asked them to work with ancient technologies. So nature immersion, sound baths, breath work, yoga, meditation, twice a week for 7 weeks. And this is how it went. One student reflected, "These past couple weeks have almost felt like I was becoming friends with myself, which may be a strange way to put it, but I never have invested this much time in understanding the way my brain and consciousness operates. I never really knew how to regulate my own emotions before this class other than using distractions, such as television or my phone." And another student wrote to me, "I find it interesting how all of what we do in class, if all of us did it on a regular basis, doctors and pharmacists would be almost out of jobs. There is so much we can do and should be doing for ourselves." So where do we go from here then? How young is too young? Can you have self-actualization class in middle school or elementary school? Yes, I teach every Friday at a local school. Elementary kids in the morning, middle schoolers in the afternoon. There's a first time for everything. There's no special tools or expensive equipment, just tools to boost self-awareness and to fill quiet spaces with something other than the phone. I asked one of them, "What does it feel like inside your body when you're truly calm, really good inside, and just kind of empty?" I asked another student, "What do you wish adults knew about stillness that they just don't seem to get?" Maybe that it doesn't just happen when you want it to. It takes practice too. They're in 5th grade. Half of the middle schoolers signed up to repeat the Calm course. Their favorite practice was something called Kirtan Kriya, which is a chanting technique where you tap your fingers together and say the sound sa, ta, na, ma, sa, ta, na, ma. It surprised me that they made it through 6 minutes of that. But what happened afterwards surprised me even more. They sat completely still for 10 minutes, eyes closed, lulled by the song of themselves. I trusted these practices because they had worked for me. I really never expected to find peer-reviewed literature behind them. But that particular practice, Kirtan Kriya, has been studied in clinical research and been shown to protect against cognitive decline in people at risk for Alzheimer's disease. I'd studied dying neurons for years, and it turns out stillness is one way to protect them. The same students that were bouncing off the walls, literally, in the beginning of those middle school classes were intuitively drawn to something that dementia researchers are now taking seriously. And it just showed me how hungry they are, how hungry we all are for rest and for self-knowledge. I was a neuroscientist who had never studied the most important subject available to me, myself. But I have realized that I am the most important project I could ever work on, because everything I see, everyone I see, every student, every colleague, every one of my 4 kids, I see through the lens of myself. And if that lens is cracked because I don't know who I am, I won't see them clearly. I won't see anything clearly. Our students, they're not broken, but they need a model. What I've realized is that we spend billions on the plants, but we never look at the soil. We're not just teaching wonder out of our kids. We're teaching them that they don't matter, that what they feel isn't real, and that stillness is something to escape. But when you dig in the dirt, when you do the work of knowing yourself, it doesn't drain you. It fills you. I'm a better scientist, a better teacher, a better mother because I learned to be still. It shouldn't take decades to figure out you are worth knowing or that we drew this hierarchy of needs wrong. So I'm going to say the thing that no one said to me. If you're a teacher and you already feel what isn't working, that feeling is data. Trust it. If you're a parent, the framework you give your children starts with the one you give yourself. They're watching. And if you're a student, you were right. It wasn't you. You were born with everything you needed. You have permission to be still, to dig in the dirt, and to trust what you find there. We have an unmet need to know ourselves. Imagine if we started there. What if we began in kindergarten? The void, it's just stillness. And in that stillness, we grow roots. Thank you.